I want to start today with a question that I think every single person has asked themselves at least once.
Okay.
You're looking at your pay stub, you see the taxes taken out, and you just wonder, why?
To fund civilization. I mean, roads, schools, all that.
Sure, that's the textbook answer. But really think about it. The government controls the currency. The central bank has a machine, well, a digital one now, that literally creates money.
A magic money tree, as they say.
Exactly. So if the government has some massive bill to pay, why do they need to take 20% of my paycheck? Why don't they just, print what they need?
It is the ultimate economic daydream, for sure.
It feels like there's a cheat code just sitting there. But today, we're going to see why using that cheat code specifically, using the printing press to pay for government debt, is actually a trap.
And we're diving into a concept called the neutrality of money.
Which, I have to say, sounds incredibly boring.
It does. Neutrality sounds like a car just idling in the driveway.
Right. But stick with us, because the story inside this concept is basically a disaster movie. It's got a desperate government, a panicked market,
A brief moment of euphoria where everyone feels rich.
and then a really brutal crash back into reality. We're using a framework called the ISLM model to track this, but we're going to strip away the jargon and just follow the money.
And the stakes in the scenario from our notes today are, they're incredibly high. This isn't some small country.
No.
The scenario is, what if the United States government needed to borrow money and the market just said no?
Which feels impossible. I mean, U.S. debt is the safest asset in the world.
It usually is. But let's just play out the hypothetical. Imagine the deficit is huge. The Treasury Secretary calls up Wall Street and says, we're issuing bonds to cover our bills.
And Wall Street just says, no thanks, we're good.
We don't trust you anymore.
Wow. Okay, that's a terrifying phone call. So the government is just sitting there with bills to pay, soldiers, contractors, everything, and has zero cash coming in from investors.
And this is that moment of truth. You really have two hard choices.
Okay.
You can slash spending, which, destroys the economy and makes voters furious. Or you can raise taxes massively.
Also makes voters furious.
Right.
Or you look across the street at the central bank.
Door number 3. The central bank acts as the buyer of last resort.
Meaning if the private market won't buy the government's debt.
The central bank steps in and buys it.
And how do they pay for it? They don't have a giant savings account?
They just create it.
Yeah.
Out of thin air. They credit the government's account with brand new money. This is what's known as monetizing the debt.
So the government issues a bond, the central bank prints the cash to buy it, and poof, the government has money to pay its bills.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. The soldiers get paid, the bridges get built, and my taxes didn't go up. I mean, that sounds fantastic.
It starts fantastic.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to slow way down and just watch the dominoes fall.
Okay.
Because the immediate effect of this, what you might call the impact phase, it feels like a plane.
So walk me through the mechanics here. The central bank has just injected, what? Billions, maybe trillions of new dollars into the system?
Right. We call this increasing the money supply, or MBUY. And suddenly, all the banks are just flush with cash.
So much liquidity.
And they're desperate to lend it out.
Yeah.
And when banks are desperate to lend, what happens to the price of borrowing?
It drops. It's simple supply and demand. The supply of cash is high, so the cost of getting it is low. Interest rates fall.
They hit the floor. So now, put yourself in the shoes of a CEO in this economy. Yesterday, a loan for your business was 5%.
Okay.
Today, it's 1%. What do?
I'm expanding. Yeah. Immediately, I'm building that new factory I was putting off. I'm buying my competitor. I'm upgrading my whole fleet of trucks.
Exactly. Investment booms. In our model, the ISLM framework, this is the LM curve.
And the money market part of the graph.
Right. It shifts to the right. You can think of it like loosening a belt. The economy suddenly has all this room to breathe. Money is cheap. Investment is up.
And aggregate demand is just skyrocketing.
Which is just economists speak for.
Everyone trying to buy stuff?
It's the total spending in the economy. The government is spending its new money. Businesses are spending because loans are cheap. Consumers feel confident and are spending. It feels like a golden age.
So I'm still waiting for the catch. Because right now, all I'm hearing is low rates, high investment, happy government.
What?
Why is this a danger?
Because of the one crucial condition we haven't talked about yet. Our source material is very specific that this economy is starting at. Full employment.
Okay, let's unpack full employment. Because when I hear that, I think 0% unemployment, which that doesn't really exist.
You're right. In economics, it doesn't mean every single person has a job. It means the economy is running at its maximum sustainable capacity.
So every factory is already running 2 shifts.
Every truck is on the road.
Yeah.
Every skilled welder already has a job. The output gap is zero. We were completely maxed out.
So we've just dumped a boatload of cash on everyone and said, go buy things. But the economy physically cannot make any more things.
And that is the collision. That's the conflict. You, as that business owner, you got your cheap loan. You have the money.
Right.
But you call the construction firm to build your new factory, and they say,
sorry, we're booked solid for 2 years.
You try to buy steel, and the mill says we're sold out.
So I have the cash, but I can't actually turn it into real stuff.
Well, you can, but you have to fight for it. You have to outbid the other guy who also just got a cheap loan. You go to that construction firm and say, forget that other guy, I'll pay you double. You go to the steel mill and say, I'll pay 20% above whatever the market rate is.
And since everyone has cheap money, everyone is doing the exact same thing.
It becomes a bidding war across the entire economy. And since the actual quantity of goods, what we call Y, cannot increase.
Because we're at full employment.
The only variable that can move is price.
Yeah. So the sugar rush of cheap money turns directly into an inflation spike.
Not just a spike. It's a rapid, aggressive repricing of everything. And this is where the neutrality of money gets really interesting mechanically. We have to talk about real money balances.
Okay, this is the M over P concept from the notes. This is where I always get a little tripped up.
Let's make it simple. Real money balance is just a fancy way of asking how much stuff can the money in your pocket actually buy?
It's purchasing power.
Exactly. It's the purchasing power of the entire money supply.
Okay. So initially, the central bank printed more money, so M went way up.
Right.
And prices, P, they hadn't moved yet. So for a minute there, we felt rich.
We were cash rich. We had more physical and digital dollars than we needed for our daily transactions.
And that's why we were trying to lend it out or buy bonds with the extra.
And that's what drove interest rates down in the first place.
Yeah.
But then
the inflation hits.
Prices, P, start rising fast. And suddenly, that $100 bill in your wallet doesn't cover your grocery trip anymore. Now you need 120, then 150. Yeah. You are no longer cash rich. You are cash squeezed.
So the extra liquidity I thought I had, it's just gone.
Yeah.
It's basically eaten by the higher price tags.
It was. And this causes a crucial behavioral shift. Because everything costs more, you now need to hold more liquid cash just to get by.
Right, just for day-to-day stuff.
So you stop buying bonds. You might even have to sell some bonds you own just to get cash.
And when everyone stops buying bonds and starts selling them,
the price of bonds falls and interest rates go back up.
Wait a second. So the low interest rates, the entire reason we had that investment boom in the first place, they don't last.
They cannot last. As prices rise, they completely erode the real value of that new money. In that ISLM visual, imagine that belt we loosened.
Yeah.
Inflation is like the belly growing until the belt is just as tight as it was before. The LM curve shifts right back to the left.
It just retreats.
It's forced back. The market itself drives interest rates higher because lenders need a premium to give you money that's losing value every single day.
Okay, so let's check the scoreboard at the end of this whole cycle. The central bank printed money, prices went up, interest rates went down for a bit, then they came all the way back up. Where does the economy finally settle?
We end up right back where we started, at the original equilibrium.
So output, well, it's exactly where it was, at full employment.
Exactly. We didn't create a single extra job or build a single extra widget that stuck around. The real variables, how many houses we build, how much food we grow, they're all unchanged.
But something did change.
The price level. If the central bank increased the money supply by 20%, then eventually prices rise by 20%.
And that's the neutrality.
That is the neutrality of money. It means that, in the long run, just changing the amount of paper money only affects the paper numbers, like prices and wages. It has no effect on real things, like production or employment.
That feels, I don't know, like a tragedy. We went through all of that chaos, the bidding wars, the confusion, the boom and bust, just to end up with the exact same economy, but now everything's more expensive.
And this is why the source material calls it the danger of deficit financing. Because while the economy looks the same on a chart, the damage done to people is very real. We have to talk about the hidden tax.
Yes, I wanted to get to this because you said earlier the whole point was that the government avoided raising taxes.
They avoided legislating a tax. But inflation is a tax. Think about it. Who ultimately paid for the government's debt?
Well, the central bank just printed the money.
Where did the value for that new money come from? It came from everyone else holding dollars. If you had $10,000 in your savings account and prices go up by 20%.
I just lost 20% of my purchasing power.
Exactly. The government got the resources it needed, the steel, the labor, the concrete, and your savings account paid the bill.
That is actually infuriating when you frame it that way. It's a massive wealth transfer from savers to the government, but nobody ever voted on it.
It's the most politically convenient tax there is because it's invisible. You don't get a bill in the mail from the IRS for the inflation tax.
Yeah. You just get mad at the grocery store, you blame the greedy corporation or the supply chain.
But the real culprit is often the monetary expansion that happened, a year or 18 months ago.
So to go all the way back to my opening question, why don't we just print the money? The answer is we do, but you pay for it anyway, just in a much messier, more hidden way.
A messier and much more destabilizing way. It completely disrupts planning. If you're running a business, how can you plan for the future when you have no idea what your money will be worth next year?
Right. And that investment boom we saw at the start, a lot of those projects must fail when the interest rates shoot back up.
They do. It's what's called malinvestment. The government's need for real resources crowded out the private sector. But instead of doing it through high interest rates from the start, they did it through the chaos of inflation.
The physical reality is still there. We're at full employment. The government can only use more resources if you and I use fewer.
We have to share the pie.
And printing more tickets for the pie doesn't make the pie any bigger.
That is the perfect analogy.
I do want to challenge this for just a second, though. We're painting a pretty bleak picture of the central bank stepping in, but doesn't the Fed buy bonds all the time? Is it always this bad?
That is a critical distinction. Context is everything. Remember, our whole scenario today was built on one specific condition.
Full employment. The factory is already at full capacity.
Right. But what if the factory was half empty? What if we were in a deep recession like 2008 or at the start of 2020?
Then you have millions of idle workers. You have factories shut down.
Exactly. And if you print money and stimulate demand when you have all those idle resources, they can be put back to work. You can actually produce more goods.
Yeah, I see.
In that case, money isn't neutral. It can actually be the thing that jumpstarts the engine.
So the printing press is like medicine in a recession, but it's poison in a boom.
That's a very fair simplification.
Yeah.
The danger always comes when politicians confuse the two situations. They see it work during a crisis, and they think,
Okay, that felt pretty good. Why don't we just do this all the time?
And that brings us right back to the specific problem of deficit financing. This isn't about saving a broken economy. It's about a government refusing to balance its own checkbook.
It's using monetary policy to solve a fiscal problem.
Yes, it's a violation of the separation of powers in an economic sense. The central bank is supposed to be the guardian of the currency's value.
Not the government's personal piggy bank.
And if the central bank loses that independence, if it just becomes a rubber stamp for whatever the Treasury wants to spend, then the neutrality logic takes over completely. All you get is inflation.
And history is just littered with countries that tried this, right? It never ends with a free lunch.
It ends with currency devaluation every time.
Okay, let's summarize the journey we took, because those ISLM mechanics can get a little heady.
Let's do it.
Step 1. The government has a deficit, but the market says no more loans.
Step 2. The central bank fires up the printing press to buy the government's debt.
Step 3. The money supply, M, explodes and interest rates crash.
Step 4. We all feel rich. We try to buy and build everything at once.
Step 5. We slam into the physical wall of full employment. Not enough stuff to buy.
Step 6. A massive bidding war starts. Prices, P, skyrocket.
Step 7. Our money is suddenly worth less. The M over P ratio drops. So we stop lending and interest rates snap all the way back up.
And step 8. We were right back where we started. But now we're all poorer in real terms.
The only legacy is a higher price level across the board.
That is the entire cycle. From equilibrium to a false boom to inflation and right back to the same equilibrium.
It really makes you look at the financial news differently. When you hear the Fed is engaging in quantitative easing, the first question you have to ask is,
where is the supply side? Can the economy actually make the stuff we're trying to buy with this new money?
I think the point that's going to stick with me the most is that hidden tax. It just feels like a fundamental breach of trust.
It absolutely creates winners and losers. Debtors win because they get to pay back their loans with cheaper, devalued dollars.
Savers just get wiped out.
It reorders society in a way that's not transparent at all.
So before we sign off, I just want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've used this model to show pretty clearly, I think, that printing money at full employment serves no real economic purpose. It doesn't create wealth, it just creates a mess.
Right.
So why is the temptation still so strong? Why do we constantly see politicians and even some economists pushing for this? Is it really just that the initial sugar rush feels so good that they're willing to bet the crash won't happen until after the next election?
Short-term gain for long-term pain. It's the oldest trap in politics.
A trap that maybe now we all know how to spot a little better. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Keep an eye on those price levels, and we'll catch you on the next one.